really an honor to be here. I've done a lot of speaking in my life, in my career, and I always feel like it's just an honor to be to have people come and hear whatever I have to say, and I really appreciate you being here. Appreciate you inviting me to come. It's also a double pleasure when I get to speak to a group of people that are passionate about liberty and freedom and trying to save our what's good about our country and our Constitution and the principles it was based on. So I am really thrilled to be here. How much time do you want me to take?
As long as you want. You're free.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
free.
Absolutely. What I thought I would do is, this is the second thing I wrote, the Common Sense Revisited. I also wrote a book when I ran for governor in Iowa in 2002 against Tom Vilsack. Tom Vilsack, how many of you know who Tom Vilsack is? Does that ring a bell with anybody? Tom Vilsack was the governor of Iowa at that time, Democrat, who was appointed the Secretary of Agriculture by the Obama administration. And one of the things that I talked a lot about when I ran for governor against Vilsack is the fact that he was the Biotech Governor of the Year. The reason he was named the Biotech Governor of the Year is because he promoted genetically modified food to the other governors of the country, and he was therefore named the Biotech Governor of the Year by Monsanto and Conagra and Cargill and all of our good friends there that really have the best interests of us in their hearts. And we wouldn't be able to feed all the people in the world if it wasn't for the genetically modified food. And the only thing I wanted to ask them is, how did China get 1 billion people without genetically modified food? I don't understand that. But anyway, I ran against that guy for governor. He is now approved GMO alfalfa. Let me tell you, I don't know how many of you follow this GMO thing, but once GMO alfalfa gets out in the environment, it's all over. It's bye-bye, because the bees and it's such a ubiquitous crop, and the bees all go to alfalfa, and then they go everywhere else. And we got to stop that. You got to do whatever you can to stop that, because it's a disaster. Anyway. I wrote a book called Restoring the Heart of America in 2002, ran for governor, and then after pretty much going broke running for governor, I had to go back to work. So I have a company called Random Marketing Group. I teach financial advisors. I've been in that field for about 36 years now. I teach financial advisors how to do their business, investments and finance. That's my background. But my true love and my true passion is teaching people about the Constitution, the fundamental principles our country was based on. I've been teaching people that in our county. This is a good story. In our county, Jefferson County, Iowa, good name for a county, we were one of 2 counties in the country that carried for Ron Paul. We had 37% for Ron Paul. And it was because myself and a few others started educating people in our county. Back in the early 90s, we started doing constitutional study groups, we started doing all these things, and what it led to was when Ron Paul ran for governor or for president, we already had hundreds of people in our group. And so it was amazing what we were able to do. And that was, by the way, that was at the first primary in the country. So there was, I think, 11 Republicans on the ballot, and Ron Paul got 37%. Huckabee was next with like 28 or 27, and then all the rest were less. So it was a total domination by Ron Paul in our county. But it all starts with education. So what I did when I saw Ron Paul in that first debate, I thought, and the way he was being maligned by the master of ceremonies and maligned by the other candidates and everything, and I thought, my God, Ron Paul, he's 72 years old. He's been, speaking the freedom message for 30 years in Congress. Here he is, 72 years old, running for president. I ran for governor, and it wore me out. I can't imagine running for president at 72. It just blows my mind. But I thought, if he can do that, I can at least sit down and write Common Sense Revisited, which has been in my head for years. And how many of you have read Common Sense by Thomas Paine? Okay, a few of you.
Where can I get it?
You go online. You can read it online. You go to the library. But Does anybody know the story about what happened with common sense? In January of 1776, the Continental Congress was meeting, and Washington was in Boston fighting the British, right? So the war had already started. Lexington and Concord had already happened. Jefferson really wanted independence. John Adams did. But they knew that they didn't have all the support that they needed among the delegates, but they didn't know how bad it was. So about halfway through January 1776, they took a poll of the delegates. Anybody know what percentage were for getting back with England at that time?
Probably 66.
About 75% were for getting back with England in January. Remember, the Declaration of Independence was signed with a unanimous vote in July. So what happened during that 6 months? Because it was a massive shift.
Popular opinion.
Common sense. Common sense. What happened is in late January, 50,000 copies of Common Sense were sold in about 10 days. And then they ran the presses, and they had another 50,000. And those were gone in 10 days. Over the next couple of months, they calculate somewhere around 500,000 copies of Common Sense were floating around in the colonies. And anybody know how many people were there then? About between 2.5 and 3 million people. 500,000 copies. It would be like selling a book that sold 50 million copies today.
Right.
So anyway, that was read pretty much by everybody in the country, and there was a paradigm shift, what I call a paradigm shift, occurred in the country over the next few months. And Adams knew it was happening, Washington knew it was happening. I have letters in here that Washington wrote about in April saying a shift is occurring in the country, and it's because common sense is creating that shift around the country. And back in Virginia, he was talking about. So that shift occurred, and so I thought, well, what is it in Common Sense by Thomas Paine that created that shift? And really what it was, if you read it, it's simple. It's exact same length as this. You could read it in an hour and a half. And what he did is he laid out who has the power. Who has the power? Is it the government? Is it the kings? Is it the royalty? Or, by God, is it the people? And he laid out that message. The message of the Enlightenment thinkers, John Locke and the others, is that we as human beings are the only entities on planet Earth who have indigenous power. In other words, we're the only one. We have free will given to us by our Creator, or whoever you think created us. And there may be atheists here, and that's fine with me. I don't care, as long as you believe in free will, because that's the key and that's the crux of it. It is who has the power. We are the only entities that have free will. We have the right, the natural right, to create our own reality. We're the only creatures on the planet that can think a thought and manifest that thought into reality. That's indigenous power. But as human beings, almost since the beginning, we've created institutions to help us do things. And that's okay. We can create corporations or limited partnerships or governments, but those are surrogates. Those are our servants. And that's what Thomas Paine laid out very clearly in Common Sense. He said, this King George, all he is a descendant of some brutal tyrant who is more brutal and more barbarous than the tyrant before him. And this is just a descendant of that guy. And he explained it in so clear language and such common sense principles that everyone got the message. Hey, this king doesn't have any power over me. He's just like me, except he's a descendant of some brute. And I have the power to make my own life, to do my own thinking. And that thinking already was pretty prevalent in the colonies at that time. Because these were people that left Europe for their freedom. Yeah?